A few weeks ago, I came across a story on Facebook about a young guy who was retelling how he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in an attempt to commit suicide. He said that he was suffering from depression and paranoia, and the only thing that he felt could make the suffering end was by jumping off the bridge. He fell 25 stories at a rate of 35 miles per hour. It took 4 seconds for him to hit the water. He said that the second his hands left the railing, it was a feeling of instant regret. I walked across that bridge 4 years ago with some friends of mine as we were road tripping across California. As we made our way across the bridge, we saw several of these yellow boxes with big red push buttons that said, "Crisis counseling, make the call, there's hope." The consequences for jumping off the bridge are tragic and fatal. We laughed and we joked and talked about all the possibilities of all the ghosts that were haunting the bridge. Now thinking about it, I realized how cruel and insensitive that was. I moved to Victoria about 3 years ago. I felt like a failure that couldn't make it in the big city on my own, but I knew that wasn't the truth. I moved back to help my siblings take care of my parents. I took on too many responsibilities. As a full-time student, a full-time employee at a job that I really didn't like, a new homeowner, and a caregiver to parents with degenerative illnesses. Instantly, this triggered depression and anxiety. For the most part, I managed to keep it together, but over time, the stress became too much. I felt like the only things that helped me were chocolate and alcohol. And after that, fried foods. It's the only thing that made me feel better. But I noticed that my clothes weren't fitting anymore. I was getting sick more often, like someone could cough and the next day I felt like I was sick. The stress had weakened my immune system to the point of it almost being non-existent. And I couldn't sleep. If I did, it was just for a few minutes at a time. One day at work, I began having these really awful chest pains, and I quickly started to assess what was going on. Like, okay, is my skin clammy? Do I feel any pain shooting down my left arm? Because I honestly thought that I was having a heart attack. I texted one of my best friends, and I told him everything that I was experiencing. He told me just to calm down and breathe, just relax, that it sounded like I was having a panic attack. He told me to do some breathing exercises and suggested that I go see a doctor. But of course, I didn't listen. I checked WebMD multiple times, and then I consulted the pharmacy of Facebook just to see what my friends, any advice that they could give me. It took having a horrible fight with that friend for me to get help when he told me that my behavior was toxic and that he maybe didn't want me in his life anymore. So after that, I made the appointment. I decided I was going to take a stand. I'm going to make a change. So I called, set up the appointment. The morning of the appointment, my anxiety was so bad that I was not going to go. But then I realized I'm too broke to afford the fee of not showing up. So I went anyway. Instantly, my doctor, told me to calm down, relax, don't be nervous. He could tell that I was unsure of what was about to happen. He started asking me simple questions at first. Asked me about my sleep patterns. Asked me about my eating habits. He asked me about how many times I cried a week. He asked me if I felt guilty about anything. And the very last question he asked me, "Do you have any suicidal thoughts?" And my silence was a loud, resounding yes. I'm grateful that that friend pointed out the toxic behavior that I was exhibiting. And the main thing that I've learned from this entire experience is that if you feel that you're suffering from depression or anxiety, seek help, talk to a doctor, find a therapist, talk to a friend. And I've also learned that even if you're not experiencing these types of feelings, that maybe if you experience someone who has a friend, a family member, to be that voice, to be that person that tells them, go, see a doctor, or just be that ear when they need someone to talk to. The Golden Gate Bridge was completed in 1937, and since then, 2,000 people have decided to end their lives by jumping off of it. Maybe, just maybe, had they had someone like my friend to convince me to go see a doctor, they might still be alive.